Joining us here in the studio, Dr. Chuck Freilich. He's former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and a professor at Tel Aviv and Columbia Universities. Chuck, great to have you back with us. So bottom line, I mean, why now in your eyes? Is this defense pact really a good thing for Israel's security, or is this a political tactic?
Well, first of all, I would differentiate here between the politics of the issue and the substance. I personally, under the right circumstances, am a strong supporter of the idea of a defense pact. But clearly, this is another attempt by the Prime Minister to do everything possible to pull every rabbit out of the hat that might in some way help keep him out of jail. And so this is maybe the right idea for the wrong reasons and under the wrong circumstances and maybe in the wrong way. Will he agree to terms that he might otherwise not agree to?
And Chuck, just help us define specifically what we're talking about when we talk about a defense pact, that each country would defend each other if attacked or taking any kind of military operation?
First of all, there's no one definition of a defense treaty. The United States has 50 defense treaties with 50 different countries, including 28 NATO members. And each of these agreements is somewhat different. But the essence of a defense treaty is the mutual commitment to consult and to act together to meet a threat to the other country's security. Now, one of the things that Mr. Gantz was afraid of, and this is the long-standing fear of the defense establishment in Israel, and why most of the Israeli defense establishment has opposed a defense treaty for decades, and that's the fear that it would limit Israel's freedom of maneuver. Now, I think that the solution to that fear is to say that this treaty will be limited purely to existential and other extreme threats. Israel doesn't need the United States to deal with Hezbollah, to deal with Hamas, even to deal with the Iranian efforts to set up base in the north. Where we might need the United States is if Iran succeeds in going nuclear, and more importantly, because that I think we can handle on our own also, but if Iran goes nuclear, and maybe even if not, it looks like we're approaching a Middle East in which there will be a number of nuclear powers: Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and according to foreign sources, Israel is also. So we're talking 3 or 4 players down the line who don't communicate with each other. Now, that's a nightmare scenario that makes the dangers of the U.S.-Soviet rivalry pale in comparison. It's not the end of humanity because the bombs aren't the same size, but the danger of it actually happening, infinitely worse.
Chuck, so what happens if, let's look at the future, because we have Netanyahu proposing this now during the Trump administration, extremely warm relationship between the two leaders. What happens if a pact like this is signed now, and then down the line a different administration comes in the White House who has a dramatically different view, not only of the Israeli government, but of American commitment to it?
Well, first of all, I don't see this happening so quickly. First of all, because there is strong opposition on the Israeli side, and there's strong opposition on the American side. The United States hasn't signed a defense pact with any country since 1961.
And these days, the White House isn't a huge fan of alliances and pacts.
And the relationship between the White House and the Pentagon isn't so great nowadays either. But the fact is, this is the greatest commitment that the United States can take on itself towards any country. And so it doesn't do it easily. And the thought that you can just do this as a quick electoral grab is, under present circumstances in both countries, it's hard to say that anything is impossible, but it's really hard to imagine that this could happen. Let's say that you're right, it does happen. The whole point to a defense treaty, and to my way of thinking, one of the biggest reasons that Israel should be interested in it, is because it isn't something that just any administration can come along and change. And I think we can handle all of the military threats we face on our own. What I'm concerned about is it's not even long-term, it's a medium-term deterioration, which I think is going to happen in the bilateral relationship. And I would like to use the present circumstances, maybe the Trump administration, the election year, to reach an agreement such as this, which will cement the relationship for the long term.
Chuck, briefly, was this ever seriously discussed during your time on the National Security Council?
Well, in my time, very briefly. Ben-Gurion was the first prime minister to consider it. Rabin, Peres, and Barak all considered it as an American strategic quid pro quo in the event that we reached a peace agreement with the Palestinians or Syria. The Israeli public would be, at a minimum, upset over the extreme concessions that we would have to make, and this would be something to assuage public concern.
All right. Well, it looks like this maybe is an idea that's time has come, or maybe it's an idea.
Like Chuck said, anything can happen.
Right.
Never say
Under the
never
right
in the
circumstances,
framework.
I believe it's a good idea.
All right. Maybe still an idea ahead of its time. Dr. Chuck
Possibly.
Swindoll, thank you for joining us
Thank you.
on the